Thank you for turning out on this momentous day, as far as we're concerned, the 125th birthday of our little railway here. And please can I hand you over to the railway's chairman, Trevor Nall.
Good morning, everybody. Your Excellency, President of Tynwald, honoured guests and friends. Thank you for coming to embrace the glories of Manx Liquid sunshine, to mark a day that is so special to us, but the weather will not dampen it. Today is one of those days where a family of volunteers, we take a deep breath and look all around us and take in how remarkable it is that this little railway has survived against all the odds. Actually, it is still here in this condition to celebrate such a milestone anniversary of its 125th birthday, complete with its original locomotive still in service. Looking back 125 years, we all have a very nostalgic view of the establishment of this railway and the glen that it resides in. The entrepreneur and chairman of Onchan Commissioners, Richard Maltby Broadbent, was a businessman who, like many of his age, at that time possessed a passion, a foresight, a vision and a drive to invest, the belief that if you build it, they will come. The glen isn't an ancient woodland. It was planted as part of a huge tourist attraction that once featured all manner of attractions to entertain tourists and locals alike. We have a great deal to thank Richard Maltby Broadbent for, and we're indeed honoured that his direct descendants are here today with us and are still involved in supporting the line. The railway's fortunes were very much linked with the fortunes of the island's tourist industry, and the original line closed in 1963 and subsequently scrapped, with the only remains being the fencing at the top of this station behind us. Then in 1982 we came along, a group of volunteers who wanted to focus their efforts on restoring a small part of this island's world-renowned heritage systems. Most people thought they were mad, and to be honest, the jury's still out on that one, but with a lot of enthusiasm and very little else, they began to clear the site. I say we came along. This group of volunteers feels very much like a family, but it's a transient one. All of us here feel very proud with what has been achieved over the past 39 years, but there are only two of the original 1982 team still volunteering on the line, and there are also a number of absent friends who were passionate about bringing this railway back to life and who are sadly no longer with us. We salute all of them for their early work in re-establishing the railway and laying the foundations of the Groudle family of volunteers who today go from strength to strength, side by side with the railway, which they work so hard to maintain and develop. As many of our partners in our lives will tell you, volunteering at Groudle is a little more than a pastime, or a hobby, or a passion. It's actually a full-time obsession. One day a week volunteering down this glen doesn't begin to cover the vast number of hours that our team devote to the railway, and I hope you will agree that the work that we've done is clear for you all to see. Railways, however, aren't cheap, and anything bigger than a Hornby train set has lots of pound sounds attached to it. We couldn't have done all this without the continued very generous support from a wide variety of people and organisations over the years, such as the Scheinberg family, the Manx Lottery Trust, the Alan Chinnery Trust, the Elizabeth Clucas Trust, the Gough Ritchie Charitable Trust, Culture Vannin and the Manx Foundation, and a large number of private donors and those who have left legacies to the line which allowed us to rebuild what you see today. So on behalf of all of us at the railway, a heartfelt thank you to you all. Without you, we wouldn't have been able to achieve half of what you can see. There are still challenges ahead, and the last year or so has dramatically highlighted just how fragile the future of priceless heritage such of our railway is. But as a team of volunteers, as a family, we will continue to maintain and develop this little railway for a long time into the future, past its 125th birthday. To ensure that future generations can enjoy something that we feel so very fortunate to have played a part in restoring a railway that after 125 years still exists to perform its original function, to carry families and visitors from the middle of nowhere to the edge of it and back, purely for the purposes of pleasure. And where else would you want to travel on a railway line that goes uphill to the sea? To all of you, thank you. And I would like now to hand over to one of our honorary patrons, Mr. Charles Gard, MBE, to explain a little more about the heritage of our railway. Charles.
Your Excellency, Mr. President, members of Tynwald, ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard a very excellent speech, and I know your heart's sinking to think that you've got to listen to another one, but it will be short, and we all want to see how long Donnan can keep his right arm out for anyway, without sagging. I think as patron they feel they have to wheel me out on these sort of occasions, and shortly I'll be decommissioned and put back in the shed over there for the next anniversary. I just wanted to say what an incredible thing it is to have a railway here that's been here for 125 years, still with many of its original staff as well. That's the interesting thing. Few of you will be aware of the 1871 Bank Holiday Act in the UK, and why would you? But that, amongst many other social changes in England, in Britain, brought about an astonishing change to the Isle of Man, because social advances, in fact, legal obligation to give employees holidays meant that from the late Victorian period onwards, the Isle of Man was receiving, as you know, hundreds of thousands of visitors every year. And we must thank a previous governor, Henry Locke, for A, giving us the vote, B, building Loch Prom, and C, Victoria Pier. And by the time we got to the Edwardian period, we had 1,400 boarding houses in Douglas alone. And around 670,000 people were coming every year. And that was just between the Whitsun Bank holiday in May and the end of September. So at any one time, we had about 70 or 80,000 people on the Isle of Man. If you just think of that, that's about 180,000 meals a day were being provided for our guests. Even in the 50s, the 1950s that is, when I was born, in the hydro, we were doing well over 500 meals a day. It was a phenomenal operation. And of course, all these people needed entertaining. And that's where the entrepreneurs came in. There were cafes from the Sound right to the top of Snaefell. Every glen was developed, all the theatres, the music halls, and eventually the cinemas, and of course, the railways. We now, in the 21st century, are unique in the world. And that's just what I want to point to today, that we have an extraordinary section of heritage here. For me, in a small way, our heritage is as valuable to us as the pyramids are to Egypt. We have, for example, the greatest water wheel ever built on the planet, and that's quite something. We just take these things for granted. I know it's in a bit of a sad state at the moment, but arrangements have been made to bring it back into full action. And just across there, in 1893, the first stage of the Great Manx Electric Railway was finished, and it went on in future years to go to Ramsey and the separate Manx Snaefell Mountain Railway. It was pioneering in its day. The world was talking about this. Although every city worth its salt had an electric railway, none were like ours. And it survives today as the oldest surviving electric railway in the world. All right, there's a short stretch of line in Brighton, but that doesn't in any way compare to what we've got here. And I just want to thank the Treasury Minister, who I don't know if he's come, and the Minister for the Environment for the amount of investment they've put into the railway in recent years, because it's a great joy to see it functioning and looked after, and the Snaefell Mountain Railway. And let there never be any talk of any part of it being tarmacked over for a cycle track. Thank you for clapping. In fact, Dexter's here. He's my little godson, 2.5 years, and he and I were waiting at Derby Castle yesterday morning to be on the first tram of the year. And I've never seen anything like it, because as the tram came out of the sheds, he was shaking with excitement, as we all were. We went to Ramsey, we came back, we had lunch on the way, and all the trams were full. And this is a point that's most important. This heritage is ours. We pay for it. We want it looked after. It's for the Manx people. Of course, we love the tourists coming over, but we need to be proud of it, and we need to look after it, as we are doing. And the horse trams, I can't not mention them, must, as we all know, go back to the sea terminal eventually, and plans are afoot for that. You see, the government bought, thank goodness, the Camera Obscura way back and did a brilliant job restoring it. It's unique in the world. So many things on the Isle of Man are unique. But that doesn't mean we're an old, backward, heritage-obsessed society. The Isle of Man is a success story. If you remember 1982 with the crash of the Savings and Investment Bank, and in those days anyone who had a biro could get a banking licence, the government had just £1 million in reserve. That was all. It couldn't pay any of the depositors. And the rows went on for years afterwards. I was reporting it on Manx Radio. The Manning Line was lit up year after year with people complaining. Look at our reserves now. I don't know the exact figure. It's hundreds of millions. So the Isle of Man is a huge success story. The economy's been managed brilliantly for the last 40 years, and many far-sighted decisions have been made that have made us what we are today. And the heritage is only a small but vital part of that. And this railway, you know, at Christmas there were no people over here because the borders were closed. How many Manx people bothered to turn up for the 2 or 3 days it was open? Only 5,500 came here over Christmas. It's fantastic. And that shows how much we value our weather and our heritage. So I'll draw to a close just to congratulate the team. As patron, I used to go to their committee meetings, but I stopped because I honestly couldn't understand anything they were talking about. So brilliantly technical is their knowledge. This railway is run to the very highest standard. It is rigorously inspected every year, like all the railways in the British Isles. So you're on one of the safest railways you can be on. It's an enormous tribute to them and to the Isle of Man and all the sponsors here that it is still running. So the challenge now is to cut this wonderful cake up into enough slices for everybody to have a piece. But I think His Excellency is going to do that for us. So let me ask you to join in to celebrate the first 125 years of the Groudle Railway. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Charles. God, I feel even more proud to live here now. Right. And thank you for your continued support of the railway. I would now like to ask His Excellency, the Lieutenant Governor, Richard Gozney, to come and cut the cake, please.
Let me just say, before then, for only 5 of the last 125 years, my wife and I have been walking this part of the island quite regularly, and whether we've been coming down the glen from White Bridges, whether we've been coming round King Edward Road, or whether we've been coming down in the direction of Lonnon Old Church, the weekends in the summer, and occasionally at Easter when that's allowed, and at Christmas, the sound of the Groudle Railway, what do you call it, a whistle? No, whistle, we call it a whistle, allowed to call it, and the smoke coming up has been for us one of the most comforting, reassuring and delightful sounds of our walks in this part of the island, and long may it go on. If you manage another 125 years, that's just a fairly modest objective to set yourselves. On which note, I'll see if we can cut this cake. I'm only going to take one slice. Someone else takes responsibility for all the rest. I need expert engineering advice as to where they do this.
So.
Good.